Over 50 miles in. I don't know, I'm running out of things to say. Hey everybody, Father Zach here. Welcome back to the channel. It's been quite a while since I had a chance to do one of these race reviews. I actually had an opportunity to run the Bandera 100K right here in Texas this past January, but unfortunately I never got around to making a video for that one. So this is my first time doing a video in quite some time. Today I want to talk about my experience running the Arkansas Traveler 100 miler on October 7th of this year. The Arkansas Traveler was a race that I picked because honestly it just looked like a lot of fun. There's really a great culture about this race. It's kind of one of the older ultramarathons in the country, and it really draws the trail running community in Arkansas together. So I thought it would be a really cool thing to kind of take part in that. I also wanted to see if I could potentially break 24 hours for 100 miles, which is something I've always suspected I could do, but I never really felt like I had a good shot at it because I had been picking more mountainous races to run. And many of them were actually a good bit over 100 miles. But as far as I understood, the Arkansas Traveler 100 is pretty runnable. Even though it's on trails and kind of dirt access roads, you can still run a pretty good time. Training for this race actually went really well, despite the Texas heat, which was pretty historic this year. I usually do 3-month training cycles for my 100 milers, which is not much, but I always kind of struggle with wear and tear on my body, so I figure err on the side of caution rather than going maybe a little bit too extreme. And with the heat, it was kind of just a matter of taking what you could get. Most of the days I would kind of have to plan in advance when the ideal window of training might be, depending on the heat and the humidity. On really hot days, sometimes you'd have to go to the gym or something or run at night. Otherwise, you were just trying to pile miles in on days where the temperature got more manageable, which in Texas is like the mid-90s. Thankfully, right before race day, the temperature in Texas and really the entire southern United States really improved, and the temperatures got a lot more manageable, a lot cooler, the humidity dropped, and it made for some really great weather for the race. So the day before the Arkansas Traveler 100, I drove out to really what felt like the middle of nowhere in Arkansas. This is Camp Ouachita, which is kind of in between Hot Springs Village and Little Rock. And I made the drive with my parents, who have been my crew for a number of my 100 milers at this point. So it was really great to have them back on board as my support and also to help with just my needs during the race. I also had 2 of my friends from the church where I am stationed made the drive out to help me out. One of them is just super enthusiastic, and I thought it'd be awesome to have him there. The other is also enthusiastic, but he actually has experience having paced someone in the San Diego 100 miler. So I definitely was looking forward to having kind of an expert pacer run with me. The night before the race, we stayed in Little Rock in a motel. The places to stay for Arkansas Traveler are not, there's not a lot of options, at least locally. I've heard people trying a few things. There's an option to camp out there at Camp Ouachita also, but I'm not really big on that the night before a race. But being in Little Rock was not too bad. It was probably about 35 to 40 minutes away. Unfortunately, being that distance away, it meant we had to wake up pretty early for the 6 a.m. start. So I was probably up around 3 a.m. to get my vest packed and get my gear on and do a last minute check to make sure I had everything where it was supposed to be, which of course is really important when you do a 100-mile race, just knowing what you have and where it's going to be so both you and your crew are set. As always, when I do these videos, my idea is not only to tell you my experience running a race, but also what the race was like in general. So if this is a race you're planning on perhaps running in the future, this might be a video that will help you to understand what things look like from a logistics standpoint, also what the course kind of looks like, so you can get a mental kind of image of what you might be facing on race day. Just a note, apart from this video, I also found it incredibly helpful on the website for the Arkansas Traveler 100 is a breakdown of not only the elevation chart, which is roughly about 12,000 feet of vertical gain throughout the course, which is a decent amount, but it's manageable, especially with the runability of the course. And that's broken down as well on the race website, where they'll actually talk about what type of surfaces you'll be running on and when, from anything from paved roads to dirt roads to kind of unmaintained four-wheeler trails. Check in the morning of the race went very smoothly. They do a little bit of it the night before, if you're able to, and then the rest of it, like picking up your bib number and things like that, happen the morning of. The Arkansas Traveler 100 starts with the University of Arkansas, I don't know what they call it, the pig call, hog call. If you are an alumnus of that school, you know what that's all about, and I'll play a little clip of it for you right here. So once the hog call is done, the race begins, and you start on a paved road for probably about 1.5 miles to 2 miles, and it's gradually downhill. And you're basically running alongside of where all of the cars have parked to drop off the runners. So it almost feels like the beginning of a road race in some way. But it is nice because you have an opportunity to get in some quicker, very easy miles right off the bat. And it's always nice in 100 miles to bank time whenever you have the opportunity. From mile, let's say 2 to about 8, you're on a pretty well-maintained dirt road, and at that point it's still dark. You're going probably gradually uphill, and really it's just a nice opportunity to enjoy a bit of silence. It's still dark. You can start to see a little bit of the first rays of dawn on the horizon, and it's just an awesome time to kind of contemplate what exactly kind of pain you're going to be in for the next 24 hours. During this segment of the race, you hit the Browns Creek aid station, which is the first aid station you'll pass. And for being, gosh, probably 7 a.m. or whenever when we passed it, it was high energy. People there were having a blast. There was bacon and all sorts of breakfast food. It was just really cool for a first aid station and race that are usually kind of, on the lighter side. This one was going all out. And that was kind of a theme with the aid stations in this race in general, is that every single one of them almost seemed to be trying to outdo the other. They were just a blast. Every single time you looked forward to coming into the aid stations. So for me personally, I started this race intentionally, maybe a little bit faster than I have started some of my previous 100 milers. And the reason for that was, I was trying to hit a bit of a faster goal time of 24 hours, but also just looking at some of the profile of the course and some of the where it kind of maps out what surfaces you'll be running on, I figured this was a good opportunity to bank some time, and it turned out that that was good judgment on my part. Also, just a note here, the hills on this course were largely runnable. And that's important to, I think, know beforehand. Sometimes you'll run courses where the hills are pretty brutal, the footing is not good, and you're just gonna have to resign to power hiking just to get up and save your legs. But in this case, most of the hills during the Arkansas Traveler 100 were manageable. So you could choose to power hike them, certainly, but you could also probably run a good bit of them, which is, again, really helpful if you're trying to cut time wherever you can. All right, well, about 1.5 hours in here, a little over 8 miles, about 8.25. So far, so good. It's kind of nice. It's just like old dirt road. And that's basically it. We started 2 miles almost on the pavement, leaving the starting line. That was kind of gradually downhill. And now, really, I feel like it's been essentially uphill ever since. I'm walking a little bit right now, but it's mostly runnable so far. Just trying to take it easy. Don't want to get burnt out, as tempting as it is to bank some time right now while it's really runnable. But my thought is that most of the course is like this, so hopefully it'll be a good day. Check in a little bit. And as I said, I was kind of mindful at the beginning about banking time, because one of the first tougher segments of this course is the section that you actually do on the Ouachita Trail, which is very rough footing in parts. Actually, some of the roughest footing that I've seen in any of the trail races that I've done. And I grew up in the Northeast where rough footing is kind of par for the course. And as rough as the Ouachita Trail segment was, it was also a heck of a lot of fun. Everyone seemed to be really enjoying themselves at that point. I actually stopped for a moment just to get some GoPro footage of the sunrise over one of the ridge lines, which was just kind of breathtaking. It's one of those first moments of the day where you remember, like, boy, trail running is awesome, right? Even though we're in for a heck of a lot of pain throughout the day, these small moments sometimes just remind you that this is all worth it in the end. About halfway through the Ouachita Trail section of the course, you'll pass back through the Browns Trail aid station. And of course, it's just as much fun, if not more fun, the second time around with even higher energy, which is good because it gets you kind of pumped up for what is, I think, probably one of the tougher sections of the course, which was a very steep uphill section of the Ouachita Trail, along a lot of ridge lines, very windy, very rocky, very slow going. So it's good to get pumped up before you head into a section like that. 12 miles in, well, that's a single track. Some nice hills too. Fun stuff. About 5 miles. So the first crew aided station. After the Ouachita Trail section of the course mercifully comes to an end, after about 16 miles into the race, you pop out at the first crew-aided aid station, which is Lake Sylvia. Again, a ton of energy at Lake Sylvia. The first crew-aided station of a race is always going to be a place where you just get fired up because you see your crew, you see everybody's crew, you just kind of feel the vibes of the first runners coming through and everyone's excited, and it just kind of sets a tone for the rest of the day. So after passing through the Lake Sylvia aid station, I got some quick aid from my parents, nothing too complicated, just maybe some gels and salt tabs. And then I started up a very gradual, long incline on a well-maintained dirt road for probably 2 miles or so. After that, you hit this very long, kind of flat section through the woods that is essentially looks like maybe a Jeep trail or a quad trail or something along those lines. And although the course was very dry, this section still had some big puddles in the middle, so you were kind of constantly working around the puddles, which was a little bit tedious, but it wasn't too bad. And I was trying to keep my pace modest at this point. It would have been very easy to start knocking out 8:30, 9-minute miles. But honestly, what purpose would have that served me towards my goal? 24-hour pace works out to be like 13, 14-minute miles. So I was trying to be very careful, trying to keep a little bit of mindfulness towards walking now and again, just to mix up my muscle groups and save my legs. So finished the single track section, and that's it. That's the only single track part of the whole course, and it was tougher than I expected, but not too bad. Just went up a pretty big hill on like a fire road, and now I'm kind of on like this unmaintained, I don't know what you even call this, but it's not bad. Pretty flat right now. Just trying to walk now and again to keep the muscle groups going, trying not to absolutely destroy my legs. I mean, so far been going well under 24-hour pace for a while, so just want to make sure I don't do anything stupid. All right. At the end of that segment, you hit the pumpkin patch aid station, and this one was all kind of Halloween themed with like the boogeyman from Nightmare Before Christmas was hanging on a tree and stuff like that. And I remember this was like the first part of the race where I got kind of depressed because one of the people at the aid station said something along the lines of, "Oh, we'll see you guys soon," once we started running away. And I started to think like, oh, soon is at mile like 95, so I won't see these people again for another like 80 miles, which was a little bit depressing. More well-maintained dirt roads after you leave Pumpkin Patch, and that led into the electronic tower aid station. And then you hit kind of like a 5 or 6 mile downhill segment on a little bit of rougher trail. This is certainly not dirt roads. This is more of like what you would experience as a traditional trail. It's not necessarily single track, but the footing is not great. But it is gradually downhill, so you can move fairly quickly. And I had the strangest experience on this section of the course. I felt like I had eaten plenty the night before the race. I had eaten a good breakfast the morning of. I had had food at every aid station, and I had been eating my GU energy gels. But I just bonked so hard on this segment to the point where I could barely run anymore. I had to stop and walk for a few minutes until I ultimately decided I'm not going to preserve any more of my gels. I need to just eat them all now and just hope that I make it to the next aid station with some energy still left in me. And that did pay off. I immediately kind of felt the resurgence that you feel when you get some calories in you. So I was able to start running again, and I felt very good, especially because it was a downhill segment. But by probably a mile away from the next aid station, I started getting really hungry again. So I was almost like playing beat the clock, trying to get into that next aid station before I ran out of energy a second time. At Lake Winona, I ate more than I had ever eaten at an aid station in a race. I probably had like 5 full peanut butter sandwiches. It was absolutely ridiculous. I almost feel bad for the aid station volunteers. Must have been like, what is wrong with this dude? We have to make like how many more sandwiches now because he just ate our entire inventory. But I was just struggling. I just needed the calories, and everything in sight seemed like something that I should eat.
I was just like, I could eat like, I want Whataburger, I want In-N-Out.
Okay. I just need calories. Oh, do you want
The potatoes have calories.
Just carbs.
Yeah,
Load up.
Yep. Twizzlers.
I mean, powdered donuts though, that's legit.
Leaving that aid station, I was starting to face some of the first symptoms of fatigue, which is, I think, pretty normal. It was about 50K into the race, which obviously isn't much in the grand scheme of 100 miles, but it is a good distance. You're talking 31 miles. So I always feel like in a race, that's the moment where you have to kind of decide, I'm not going to back off, even though I'm feeling a little bit tired, because you're going to feel tired basically in the entirety of 100 miles. So you kind of own it, and you just make the choice to push through that right from the get-go. So that next section of the course, from Lake Winona aid station to what was the Pig Trail aid station, probably about 5 miles later, was a really pivotal segment for me. It was very hilly, very steadily uphill, actually, if you look at the elevation profile. And I spent most of that time running pretty decent pace. I was passing a lot of people, and I was just kind of attacking that section of the course, which proved really helpful when it came down to chasing my 24-hour goal near the end of the race. All right, just about 36 miles in. I'm feeling okay. Definitely starting to feel it a bit. This has just been a lot of climbing. It occurred to me that this race is about 12,000 feet net gain of elevation, which isn't that bad. But if you look at the profile, it's mostly in the first half. You really are going mostly downhill from mile like 58 onwards. So you're really crushing a lot of vert in the first like 50 plus miles of this, which is probably why I'm feeling a bit in the hip flexors, but it's all right. So far, so good. Just gonna keep pushing. From Pig Trail to Club Flamingo is probably some of the steepest climbing you'll face on the entire course. This was pretty much a power hiking section exclusively. Some of the footing was pretty rough as well. So by the time I got to Club Flamingo, I was honestly feeling pretty sick. I had been throwing up pretty consistently over the past couple of miles, which was okay because actually I made it until mile, let's say 35, 36 without ever really getting sick at all. So that was a nice little run, at least for me, who struggles a lot from GI issues during a race. But shout out to the aid station volunteer at Club Flamingo who hooked me up with some Tums and kind of sent me on my way. That made a world of difference as I started the next segment towards Bahama Mama, which was kind of rolling hills up and down, very runnable again, some beautiful views on this section of the course. I think it's probably one of the higher sections of the course elevation-wise. You can tell we're getting pretty high up here elevation-wise, because all the trees are getting shorter. But yeah, 44 miles. Feeling okay. A little bit tired of climbing, but should be not too many big climbs left. So I came into Bahama Mama aid station really feeling good about things. My pace was good. I had been running virtually the entire race other than a few moments of power hiking. And I was ready to just kind of attack this next section, which I thought was pretty gradually uphill to start, and then you started working downhill into the power line aid station. Unfortunately, this is where I made my one and only real blunder of the race. I actually took a wrong turn. Now, the course is marked excellently. Even more so at night. I actually found that during the day, sometimes the arrows were a little bit harder to see. And of course, the reflector things that they would hang in the trees, you couldn't see that in daylight. So I made a very stupid wrong turn immediately out of the Bahama Mama aid station. Thankfully, I didn't go too much distance off course. It was mostly that it was just, it costed me some time because I ended up in the middle of this field, not really knowing where the trail went from there. So I kind of stood there just helplessly yelling to see if anybody else was around me. And when I didn't hear anybody, and I also didn't see any other runners for like 3 minutes, I was like, well, forget about this. I'm just going back the direction I came. And thankfully, I saw another runner crossing the trail where I had departed it, and I was like, dude, where we go? And he's like, right here, like where it obviously has a white arrow pointing in the correct direction. I was like, you know, it happens. I was bummed about it, but you just gotta take it. Like, I mean, something is going to go wrong in the course of a 100-mile race, so you just try to have a good attitude about it and not let it get to you. One of the things that was really kind of interesting is that almost all the aid stations had a pace chart attached to them, and they would kind of tell you, you know, if you're trying to hit 24 hours, here's where you want to be if, you know, at this point in the race. And I found that the whole race, I was running behind 24-hour pace according to the pace charts, but according to my watch, I was on pace, if not above it. I kind of felt like I'd been banking time. So I wonder if that was intentional to try to get you to push a little bit, knowing that you're probably going to come back slower than you go out. But that's just something to maybe pay attention to. If you run this race, don't get freaked out by the pace charts, because they are kind of, I think, calculated to really adjust for the fact that you're going to be running slower near the end of the race. So I came into Powerline aid station at pretty close to 50 miles, at least according to my GPS data. And this was a really cool aid station. Probably my favorite aid station of any of the 4 100-mile races I've done. Because it was the aid station that served mile 50-ish and also mile like 69, 70, it was really crowded because it had everybody's crew, which also meant that the energy was like off the charts. I mean, there was like a whole like paddock area set up where there was just crew hanging out waiting for their runners to come through, and everybody was just hanging out, and the vibes were pretty good there. When I left Powerline aid station, we were basically heading into the second half of the race. A lot of people at that point were picking up pacers, which is when you could start to pick up a pacer around mile 49, 50, whatever that Powerline aid station was at. However, I didn't really have a pacer who could cover those next 20 miles with me until I got back to Powerline. So I knew I was going to be by myself. And I suppose there was a little bit of a temptation there to get discouraged. almost everybody I saw around me had a pacer and was starting to kind of just enjoy that time, getting pumped up by having their pacer with them, and I was still on my own. But that was okay because I really felt like this was a time I needed to be self-motivated. I knew this would be the make or break segment of the course. If I was going to break 24 hours, it was going to happen over the next 19 to 20 miles because I knew it was a really runnable part of the course and also not that hilly. So it was kind of now or never. Am I going to keep a nice steady pace through this segment, or am I going to give in to fatigue and start power hiking? It was a choice I had to make, and thankfully I was able to kind of let my best instincts kind of win out. Over 50 miles in. I don't know, I'm running out of things to say. I'm holding up, but definitely starting to wear down. I don't know, I feel like this next 15 miles or so until I pick up my pacer, or maybe it might be 18 miles, I feel that's going to be really important. If I can hold it together for that, I can get a nice mental boost when I pick up my pacer. That's the hope. And then 30 something miles from that point, so onward. Copperhead Road and the turnaround aid stations were both super high energy, a lot of fun. I especially liked the turnaround aid station because it was like pirate themed, and when you're leaving the aid station they actually have you walk the plank, which was kind of neat. But that aid station also made me nervous because they were yelling at us at one point, like, you guys need to get out, you need to get out of here. If you are trying to break 25 hours, you need to leave now. And I was like, 25 hours? Uh-oh, like I want to break 24 hours. I must be in real rough shape. And in retrospect, maybe that was a little push I needed because I kind of went out of that aid station like a man possessed. Like, I don't know if my GPS data will affirm this, but it felt like those were some of my strongest miles. And those, after I left the turnaround aid station, I was just trying to make up ground as fast as I could as nightfall started to come upon the course. Heading back towards Powerline is, of course, when I had to turn my headlamp on, and you're dealing with nighttime in early fall. So basically, I knew that if I'm going to hit my goal of 24 hours, I won't see daylight from now until the finish. I always find that nighttime on the course, after you've been running all day, is really mentally taxing. It's when you feel like you kind of enter the real pain cave. Because all of a sudden, one of your senses is really taken away. All throughout the day, you can see, you can assess everything around you, you feel very aware of your surroundings. But then at night, you're just running through a tunnel of light. And that makes things all of a sudden really difficult. And to be honest with you, by kind of having that positive self-talk, I was able to make that segment of the course a ton of fun. I was just loving it. I was in such a good mood. At one point, I kind of just stopped in the middle of the course and just put my arms up in the air, and I was just like praising God for how much fun I was having out on the course. Even though I was in so much pain at that point, I was just so thankful to be out there. You had the stars, you could see the stars, you could see, you know, just a beautiful night sky, and it was just one of those, again, one of those moments where you realize how blessed of an opportunity it is to be able to run 100 miles. So once I got back to Powerline, I picked up Mark Anthony, my pacer.
All right, checking in. Father Zach just got here, and I'm about to take the first leg here. Gonna have some fun. Aiming. What pace are we aiming for, Father Zach? 8 minute. 8 minute miles. Gonna do it. Let's go.
I actually grabbed my trekking poles at that point. I wasn't sure if I would actually need them or not, but I figured, boy, like in a race like this, your legs can go in an instant, and I'd rather have them because there's a lot of downhill coming up. It was also at that time, when I hit Powerline aid station for the second time, that I realized I can break 24 hours on this course. I think for much of the day, I didn't really know if it was going to be possible. 12,000 feet of elevation is not again, not a lot, but it is substantial enough that it's going to thwart an opportunity for a fast time unless you're very intentional about pushing the hills. So I think at one point I kind of resigned myself to thinking like, maybe I'll run 25 hours or something and that'll be okay. But with a little over a 50K to go, I realized that my goal was in reach, and it was just going to take a really concentrated effort to get it done. So I just started pushing for 30-something miles. The time I spent with Mark Anthony was really awesome. He certainly knows what he's doing when it comes to pacing. We talked a lot. There were times when we kind of stayed quiet if I wasn't feeling that well. I was throwing up so much during that segment, just dry heaving constantly. My stomach was in shambles, but he just kept me pushing. And he kept reminding me of what my goal was. And that really gave me the extra motivation to push through some of that pain. The segment from Pig Trail aid station back to Lake Winona, which is the crew-aided station, was probably one of the best segments I've had in any of the ultramarathons that I've done. It's a slightly downhill segment and the footing is very good, and I was just able to tick off miles pretty consistently around 13 minutes, even sub 13, which for me is really fast at that point in a race where you're coming in on about 85 miles. When I came back into Lake Winona aid station, I knew that it was going to be very close if I wanted to break 24 hours. So I was really doing some planning before we even got to the aid station with Mark Anthony to see how we could minimize our time spent in that aid station. As much as I love being in aid stations, I think they're a ton of fun. I also recognize them as an opportunity to take time off of your total time. So I tried to be very, very intentional, very quick with what I was doing in aid stations. So I picked up my dad at Lake Winona and we were about to set off on what was probably about a 6-mile segment all uphill to Electronic Tower aid station. This was a part of the course I had been dreading all day. I knew that my goal of getting sub 24 would really come down to probably, a 15-minute window. And that segment all uphill on some pretty tough terrain I knew was going to be a real big deal late in the game. So I had kind of banked for the chance that maybe I would be really hurting and I could only hit maybe 20-minute miles hiking up that hill. But thankfully my dad really kept me motivated and we were able to just kind of tick off 15-minute miles pretty consistently. They were painful miles and boy was some of the footing rough. I mean, I was rolling my ankles left and right. But we stayed really motivated through there. And by the time I got to Electronic Tower aid station, I realized, okay, that was the segment I was most worried about, and we did it really well. So maybe if I can just handle some pain for a little bit longer, I could sneak in under 24 hours. And to be honest with you, after that, it was pretty much smooth sailing. When I got to the Pumpkin Patch aid station for the final time, it's the final aid station. Of course, this is the aid station where about 80-something miles earlier, they had said, well, we'll see you later. And finally, it was kind of a relief to be back there again, knowing, all right, this thing really is almost wrapped up. They told me just a 10K to go, and I'm looking at my watch and I figured, okay, just 2 hours to cover 6.2 miles. I should be able to do that. But boy, I'll tell you, that next segment leaving Pumpkin Patch tested whatever little mental strength I had left. I feel like there's a point in every race that I've done where I just cannot fathom how it's taking so long to cover a segment. And this was that segment for the Arkansas Traveler. This section just went on and on and on forever. But thankfully, all miserable moments eventually have their end, and we emerge from the woods out onto this very nicely maintained dirt road that headed back towards what earlier in the race was the Lake Sylvia aid station, which is not an aid station on the inward bound leg. And I wish I could say that the final couple of miles were some kind of a victory lap, but they definitely did not feel like that. I was just miserable. I felt so sick to my stomach, and my legs were just like lead. They hurt so bad. I was running, but it almost wasn't even advantageous for me to run anymore. I felt like I was actually hiking faster than I could run, but part of me made this goal beforehand that I was going to run this race the whole way through, even if it was pathetically slow, and indeed it was, but it was worth it to accomplish that goal and say, I'm just going to keep on running. So the last half mile or so of the race is on paved road. It's the same paved road that the race starts on. So that was nice, easy running, even though I was in pain. And Kyle, who was one of my crew members, ran out to meet my dad and I, and he ran the last probably quarter mile with us into the finish line. And I did it. I got in under 24 hours.
Yeah! Woo! Wow, Zach! Yeah! Sub 24!
173.
Proud of you. Good job.
We did it, Father Zach.
Sub 24, baby.
Congratulations.
Woo!
Thanks for coming out.
For the entire day, that had been my goal. But to be honest with you, I didn't really talk about it that much during the race. I just wanted to keep it to myself. I wanted to keep the pressure kind of light so I could enjoy the race. But then again, it was always there. The goal was always there, and it always kept me pushing forward. And I think that's exactly what an A goal should be. You know, when a lot of times when you run a race, you kind of have a set of goals, and your top goal, your A goal, is always like the thing that you're most shooting for. And I think that A goal should always be there, but it should be such that if you don't hit it, you're still going to be happy with how the day went. But it's also the thing that keeps you pushing when things are tough. Back at race headquarters, they were ready for everyone. They had IVs set up, they had breakfast set up, chairs and tables. It was just kind of like a little taste of heaven at the end of a very fun but brutal 24 hours. After about an hour of just sulking in a chair and throwing up very, very violently behind the camp office, we finally did hit the road, kind of stuffed myself into the front seat of the Toyota, and made the 5-hour trip back to Fort Worth area. And we finished up that evening. I said Catholic Mass for my family, and of course for my crew, Kyle and Mark Anthony, and it was just a great way to cap off the weekend. And ultimately, I cannot say enough good things about this race. The race director, Stacy, especially, was just fantastic. I saw her a number of times throughout the weekend, and she really just went above and beyond what you would even expect from a race director. It was obvious that she just was so excited for everyone to accomplish their goals. She treated everyone like family, even though I had never met this woman in my life. So yeah, the Arkansas Traveler 100 totally lives up to its outstanding reputation. It has such a local cult following, and for good reason. Like, the aid stations are great, the course is great, the director is great, everything about this race is awesome. I feel very grateful to have been a part of the Arkansas trail running culture for one day. And I also got to take home my first sub 24 hour buckle there. I think it looks pretty similar to the regular buckle, but it has some color to it. So super pumped about that. I'm gonna put it on my buckle rack, which is behind me there. This will be my 5th buckle. So super proud of every buckle, but this one I think especially just the work it took to finally break 24. It was just a really exciting day. I'm gonna certainly, every time I see this buckle up there, it's gonna bring back some really awesome memories. So thank you everybody for sticking with me. I hope that you found this somewhat helpful. If you're thinking about running the Arkansas Traveler 100 in the future, fantastic race, absolutely do it. We'll see you all next time.